Hello and welcome to your introduction to indirect objects and the German dative case. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about first indirect objects and other kinds of nouns that you'll see in gift-giving scenarios. We'll talk about dative articles and dative pronouns. So I wanted to show you this funny little picture I found on the internet. It's Ryan Gosling saying, "Hey girl, I'd love to hear the difference between a direct object and an indirect object." And hopefully all of us today at the end of this lesson will be able to explain the difference between the two. So the three types of nouns that you'll see in a gift-giving scenario are the subject, which takes the nominative case, and these are people giving things or information. They're the givers. The direct objects, which are the things or information being given, they take the accusative case, so those are the gifts. And then we have indirect objects. Those are the people or things receiving things or information. They're the takers. They take the dative case. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about indirect objects. Again, there are people or things that receive an object or information. They take the dative case. And in order to use these, you've got to have a subject, a verb, and a direct object. And of course, the indirect object as well in the sentence. So we've got three English sentences here. Susie is giving her boyfriend a kiss. The man buys his mother flowers. I tell them everything. Go ahead and take a minute and label all the parts of speech. Label all the subjects with an S, verbs with a V, direct objects with a D, O, and indirect objects with I-O. I'll give you a minute or two to do that. All right. So we can also review with each other what those parts of speech were. And moving on to the next section of our notes, the implied to or for. So in German, it's uncommon to say the words zu or für when transferring an item from one person to another. Like in English, we'll say, I gave the chocolate to Bobby. Well, in German, you just say, I gave Bobby the chocolate. So these words to or for are built into the meaning of the dative articles and pronouns. So to the man is just dem Mann. For us, it's just uns, and for his wife, it's seiner Frau. You don't say the zu or the für there. So here's our first example at the bottom of our notes. Sven gives the woman a bouquet. Sven is the subject, gives the verb, and the woman is the indirect object, bouquet, direct object. Now, we know that in German the woman is die Frau, but once it's dative, die turns to der, as you see here. Sven gibt der Frau einen Blumenstrauß. And just as a side note, anytime you see geben, which means to give, you're going to need to probably use the dative case, because that requires us to have a giver and a receiver of an object. Maria gives Inge a present. Maria gibt Inge ein Geschenk. The woman gives her brother the chocolate. Die Frau gibt ihrem Bruder die Schokolade. And I want you to notice here that whenever a male receives something, there's going to be an em ending usually on the article or the pronoun that's right before the noun. So that's for males, em endings. You could say, die Frau gibt ihrem Vater die Schokolade. Die Frau gibt ihrem Sohn die Schokolade. The boss gives her employee new pencils. Die Chefin gibt ihrer Angestellte neue Bleistifte. So for females, the Angestellte is a female employee. We use ER as the ending. So it could have been the boss gives her daughter new pencils. Die Chefin gibt ihrer Tochter neue Bleistifte. The boss gives her mother new pencils. Die Chefin gibt ihrer Mutter neue Bleistifte. The son gives his parents a present. Now we have the plural. So der Sohn gibt seinen Eltern ein Geschenk. Seinen. So this is the ending for plural. So for females receiving gifts, ER. For males receiving gifts, EM. And for plurals receiving gifts, EN. All right. Before we move on and take a look at the dative articles, I want to review the nominative and accusative articles. And here we go. So we're going to chant these. That's one of the good ways to memorize articles and charts, like grammar charts. Der, die, das, die, ein, eine, ein, keine. Der, die, das, die, ein, eine, ein, keine. Now on to the accusative. Den, die, das, die, einen, eine, ein, keine. Den, die, das, die, einen, eine, ein, keine. Great. So that's a review of those articles. Remember, all these words that start with D are words for the, and words that start with EI are words for a or an. And these keine, this means no or none of. Like I want no pieces of chocolate. I want no glasses of lemonade. We'll also go ahead and review the bases for all of our possessive pronouns. So these are, possessive pronouns are words kind of like my, your, his, her, its, etc. In German, it's mein, dein, sein, ihr, sein, unser, euer, ihr. Mein, dein, sein, ihr, sein, unser, euer, ihr. Mein, dein, sein, ihr, sein, unser, euer, ihr. And I have dashes on the end of these because you're going to be putting dative endings on these. Remember, an EM is going to go to the end if it's a man receiving something, an ER if it's a woman receiving something, or an EN if it's plural, a group of people receiving things. All right, here we go. On to the juicy stuff. Here are our dative articles and possessive pronouns. So we have dem, der, dem, den, einem, einer, einem, keinen. Dem, der, dem, den, einem, einer, einem, keinen. Dem, der, dem, den, einem, einer, einem, keinen. And then over here, so those were the articles that we just chanted. Over here we have the possessive pronouns. And these are all of these guys, but with dative endings on them. And notice I don't have the whole list. I have meinem, deinem, seinem, ihrem. So I only got to here, but that's only because I didn't have space for the rest of them. So basically, these ellipses show that all of these have the same endings. So that's what I pointed out here, was that all of your masculine, definite and indefinite articles and possessive pronouns are going to have an EM ending. Feminine are going to have ER. Neutral, EM as well, just like the masculine. And the plural will have an EN ending. Okay? Den, keinen, meinen, deinen. But we also add an N right to the noun, which you'll see in some of our exercises later. You add an N to the noun itself to note that it is plural in the dative case. Finally, before we do some activities, we've got to talk about who versus whom. All right, and this is something that we don't do very well in English, most of us, but we really should do a better job of this, and that is differentiating between the subject and objects of a question. So who comes into the room? Who is coming into the room? In that case, we would say who. It's in the nominative case, and in German, wer. Whom, and this is a direct object in the accusative case. So, like for instance, whom did you speak to? That would be wen. All right? And then finally, to or for whom, like for instance, to whom did you give a gift? Wem hast du ein Geschenk gegeben? So you need to distinguish in German and in English the difference between who and whom. And I've related these to some of the words for he or him. You can tell that they have the same endings, he and him, with who or whom. Okay? All right. So go ahead and now practice using the dative definite articles dem, der, dem, and den on this page. I'll give you a minute and then we'll review it. All right, let's review. Ich schenke dem Mann einen Schal. Martine gibt der Frau Bonbons. Uwe und Ute schenken ihren Kindern, Uwe und Ute schenken den Kindern Spielzeuge. Den Kindern, it's den because it's plural, and we add an N on the end of the plural noun to show that it's plural dative. Was bringst du dem Mädchen? Dem Mädchen. Ich sage den Jungen. Again, this is plural dative. And what gave it away that it's plural? Sie and dürfen. So the conjugation told us that this is plural. And think back to your little chart on who versus whom. What's the dative form? It's wem. So this one was dem Mann, der Frau, den Kindern, dem Mädchen, den Jungen, and wem. Now try your hand at the dative possessive pronoun. So you're going to go up to your chart that looks like this. It's all of these guys. Mein, dein, seine, sein, unser, euer, ihr. You're going to put dative endings on all of these. So use these to fill in these blanks. I'll give you a few minutes and then we'll check them. All right. Harold gibt seiner Schwester ein Rad. Martin und Bernd schenken ihrem Vater ein iPod. Meine Tante kauft meiner Mutter ein neues Kochbuch. Meine Freunde geben unseren Lehrern neue Schulsachen. Again, Lehrern is plural here. My friends are giving our teachers new school supplies. Was schenkt dein Papa deiner Mutter? What is your dad giving to or for your mother? And to kind of wrap up this presentation, we'll learn about dative pronouns. So in the dative pronouns basically means you need to know how to say to or for me, to or for you, to or for him, her, it, to or for us, to or for y'all, to or for you formal, and to or for them. So let's review the nominative and accusative first. We'll chant them. Ich, du, er, sie, es, wir, ihr, sie. Accusative. Mich, dich, ihn, sie, es, uns, euch, sie. And finally, dative. Mir, dir, ihm, ihr, ihm, uns, euch, ihnen. Again, chanting something or singing it or putting a rhythm or a dance to it is a great way to memorize charts like this. Okay? So take what you just saw on this chart and fill in all of these parentheses with that information. I'll give you a few minutes and then we'll review it. Okay. Meine Oma schenkt mir einen Tennisschläger. Tanjas Freund kauft ihr einen Ring. Otto hat Respekt für seine Eltern und bringt ihnen jeden Morgen die Zeitung. Was soll ich dir zu Weihnachten kaufen? Bringst du uns morgen Radios? Very nice. So, you feel like you've had too much grammar today? I don't blame you. But remember, good grammar is sexy, according to apparently this artist who created this t-shirt on Etsy. Avoid the grammar police by learning it. And if you tell yourself enough, I love grammar, it might eventually come true. So this has been a presentation by Ken Kuchta. I hope you've enjoyed learning about dative articles and indirect objects and dative pronouns. Have a wonderful day.